Okay, back to where we left off yesterday. It says many years ago, they didn't bring music to a bar mitzvah. Because the Gemara says that after the destruction of the Bais Din, you're not allowed to play music. So there was always a leniency for weddings. Even in Yerushalayim, they have leniencies for weddings. But for bar mitzvahs, years ago, people did not have a band at a bar mitzvah because, again, because of the mourning of the destruction of we're mourning over the destruction of Bais Din. In recent years, more and more people started bringing music, and they're right, it's a Sudas mitzvah. If it's a Sudas mitzvah, you're allowed to bring a band. Okay, I'm just going through this. Today, again, they make much more b'chlau with music. If you want any technical, a Jew is not allowed to listen to music today, period. That's what the Gemara says. In fact, Rav says in the Gemara in Saita that the house that walls hear music should become destroyed. That's because of the destruction of Bais Din. Later on in history, it became much more lenient or whatever. Okay, the time of the Suda, the Bar Mitzvah, we said, should be preferably on the day of the Bar Mitzvah. Now, what happens? Okay, now a kid at the time of the Bar Mitzvah is supposed to make a speech. Okay, it should be a speech of halacha or Dvar Torah, that it should be actually speaking words of Torah. Now, sometimes it's brought down, many people say the speech should be about the mitzvah of tefillin, because that's the mitzvah that he's beginning to obligate in. Now, there is a minhag that the bar mitzvah kid would start speaking, and then right away they would start singing. In Yiddish it was called uphaken, to stop him from the thing. So sometimes it used to happen, he would start, and then they would sing to stop him, and then sometimes he would continue, sometimes they would stop him again. But some people say it's not a good idea halachically to do it. In fact, people used to do that by a wedding also. I mean, in Chabad we say a mimer at a wedding. But people, Chosim would make a speech, so they would stop him. The Rebbe writes, from the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe writes that you shouldn't stop him, like by the mimer, by the chasana, same thing by the bar mitzvah. He says the whole mimer, the whole discourse without disturbing him. Then he starts again, the first pasuk, and then you disturb him. And that's it. Then at least you didn't disturb him because they're right, there's no source of it in halacha. Okay, next. Now there's another interesting question. A lot of shuls, this is brought down in Poskim, but they talk about a bar mitzvah boy here also. Sometimes when you speak, your back is to the Yordan Kodesh. So even without it, sometimes the pulpit is mamish right in front of the Yordan Kodesh. So the question is, are you allowed to speak? Can a rabbi, a bar mitzvah kid speak with his back to the Yordan Kodesh? And they write, and this is the minhag brought down in a lot of children, but they all write that you're allowed to do it because he's speaking Torah. He's speaking Torah, so it's not an issue. By the way, I should mention this also because I understand where people are coming from, but it's not the right way to do it. By Shabbos, when you get Haftorah, so the proper place of saying the Haftarah is in the middle of the shulchan, not on the side. The proper place is right here. So some people don't because the Sefer Torah is here. So they feel at the back. But that's not a reality. Your back is not to the Sefer Torah. Your back is, the Sefer Torah is there, and if the Sefer Torah is there. And it's not to the back of the Sefer Torah. In fact, the Rebbe always said Haftarah in the middle of the bima, facing forward, even though there are two Sefer Torahs behind them, it's not an issue. This shouldn't be said at the side, it should be said where you're laying, the same place. Okay, the main thing of the bar mitzvah is the speech, not the bar and not the food and anything else. Okay, now, there's a custom many places they give a bar mitzvah boy a present on Shabbos. After many of the big pulpit types of shuls, they give a kid a bar mitzvah present on Shabbos. So that's a shaila halacha because you're not allowed to give a present on Shabbos to somebody. It's a form of acquiring things on Shabbos, which you're not allowed to do, unless if it's in need of Shabbos. So the proper way of doing it is when the rabbi, let's say, gives the boy a sefer, they usually give, right, a book, they should tell him, this is what you're getting, but you really we're gonna give it to you after Shabbos. Because he doesn't need the sefer for Shabbos. It's time to give so you should have in mind that he's going to be acquiring it after Shabbos, not on Shabbos.
That's what they do at Sinai.
At Har Sinai?
Rabbi won't teach, so
we're not talking about that now. Okay. Now, when it comes to, by the way, there's another issue they bring down about the invitations to a bar mitzvah. Everything has a basis in Torah. There's what's called ksav ashuri.
What is that?
It's one way of writing the Torah.
There's what's something called ksav ashuri. Ashuri, basically, in practical language, is the writing of a sefer Torah writing. That's called ksav ashuri. According to many opinions, if you write anything in that writing, it's holy, you're not allowed to throw it out. Even if you write nothing holy, but you write ksav ashuri, that type of ksav, like a sefer Torah, tefillin type of ksav, so you're not allowed to throw it out. So in Poskim they talk generally about wedding invitations, bar mitzvah invitations, because people throw out an invitation. They take it, they read it, and they throw it out. So you're not allowed to write an invitation with ksav ashuri, because then, again, people throw it out. Another issue that they talk about in halacha, a lot of times you find that an invitation, they'll write a pasuk. They'll write a pasuk. It could be kol sasin, kol simcha, kol chasim, kol kala, which is not a pasuk, but it's a tefillah. But many times they will write a psukim. And again, they warn that you're not allowed to write psukim in an invitation, because if it's a pasuk of chumash or navi or ksuvim, you have to bury it. You can't throw it out. And people take it and they throw it out. So you're causing people, you're machshul people of throwing something out when they're really not allowed to do it. So you have to be careful when you write invitation, not to write sefer Torah writing, and not to write complete psukim. Any what? Leniency, yeah, because?
Leniency because it's not really going to trash, it's recycled.
No.
Consideration to that?
No. It still needs to be put into shemis. You can't recycle it. Recycling is not, and you could put it, if you see a construction site, they dug a hole in the ground for the construction site, you could, technically you're allowed to put shemis. I mean, they might sue you, but they might lock you up in jail, but halachically you would be able to put that. Now there's another interesting thing that people have to know about a bar mitzvah meal, and for that matter a wedding meal. There's a whole discussion in halacha, in poskim. If you go, let's say you go to a wedding, okay, and you wash for bread at a wedding. According to halacha, you're not allowed to leave until Shava Brachas, at the end of the wedding. You're not allowed to leave until Shava Brachas. Because once you washed, that means you're part of this meal, and this meal is not over with benching and Shava Brachas. So l'chayra, there's an issue in halacha if you wash at a wedding, and according to some poskim, the same things with a bar mitzvah. It's a sudas mitzvah. You wash, that means you're planning to bench. And you have to bench with everybody else. You have to bench with zimun. So there's a whole discussion in halacha, are you allowed to leave a wedding early, and are you allowed to leave a bar mitzvah early, or basically are you stuck until they do Berchat HaMazon? So there's a tshuva Rab Meisha, and the Rebbe writes the same thing, that, one second, the Rebbe writes the same thing, that because you don't have to, I mean the leniency of this is, because when you washed, you had in mind you're going to be leaving early. It's not the pshat when you washed, but by the way, what happens if you washed and you had in mind when you washed, I'm staying to the end of the wedding. Then you got into a fight with somebody, so you want to go home. Then You might have a shiloh, so you're going to have to bench bezimun, and you have to make a mezumah where you are. It's not so easy, but halachically, really, you have to stay until the end of the meal.
What if you wash and you ate just not this out, just a little bit?
No.
Bread?
No. But you had other food.
Yes.
You ate other food?
Yes.
And you got full?
Yes.
You have to bench anyway. So it doesn't matter, you still have
But
enough.
now you didn't get food. Now you just ate cheese.
Then you don't have to bench anyway, so it's a whole different story. Okay, next. Okay. These are just not practical dinim. Okay. Okay, what happens, let's say, if you want to make a bar mitzvah, chol hamoed, so I don't know if the question is, they can come by car. By the way, there's another issue that comes up a lot, especially in the Chabad houses. Kids become bar mitzvah, not religious kids, right? Not religious families, not religious kids. You can make a bar mitzvah, Shabbos and Shul, you can have all these people driving. So the question is it the proper thing to do to make a bar mitzvah on Shabbos if all those people are going to be driving? Or would it be better to make it on a Monday or Thursday, or if it's a Rosh Chodesh, where there's any rate Torah reading, and do it then? So there's no question that halachically it's preferred not to make it on Shabbos, because all you're doing is that you're causing people to drive. We said already their opinions when we were learning about bris. There are many opinions in halacha, very powerful opinions in halacha, that it's worth to push off a bris from Shabbos to Sunday, because if there's going to be chilul Shabbos at the bris, they're going to drive, they're going to take pictures, they're going to do this, that. So many opinions say if that's the case, you should push off the bris to Sunday. So it's definitely better to push off the bar mitzvah until another day of Torah reading or chol hamoed or whatever it is. Okay, I'm not going into all the details. 3 weeks, 9 days. Okay. Now's another interesting question. A lot of times in the camps, they teach kids how to make tzitzis. Now you buy them already with the tzitzis in. Years ago, when we bought talus cottons, we had to put in the tzitzis. Rarely would they put in already. So what happens, kids were taught, there was 1 year that Rebbe sent out that the kids in the camp should all be taught how to make tzitzis. But then it became the shaila, what happens, the kid puts in tzitzis when he's a kid, and then now he becomes bar mitzvah. So now, he put him in when he was a kid. So the question is the tzitzis he put in as a kid valid now that he's bar mitzvah? And there's 2 opinions in halacha. So because of that, it's taka better that if kids make tzitzis before they're bar mitzvah, if they're becoming bar mitzvah, they should undo them and redo them. No, because the question is the kids, okay? Some people say, again, there's 2 opinions in halacha if you have to redo them or not. Okay, Sfira, cotton, okay. Yeah, good. Okay, the next issue, back to, yesterday we did Tu B'Shvat, but now back to bar and bas mitzvahs. Okay, so we discussed a lot of dinim of bar mitzvah. Now, we know that girls become bas mitzvah at 12, not 13. So there's 2 reasons for that. One is because, first of all, some people say, halacha Moshe Sinai. Like we said, a boy becomes 13 because that's what Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. So therefore, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu also at Har Sinai that girls become bas mitzvah, they're obligated in mitzvahs at 12. Now, what's the reason for it? So some people, the Tesis Rosh says, because women mature quicker than men, bina yesera nitna be'isha, women are more bina than men, so therefore boys become bar mitzvah at 13, girls become bas mitzvah at 12. You don't do it in the middle of a year, so it's 12 and 13. You bring down the Pirush Mishnayos, the Rambam says another reason, which is interesting, because today, in today's world where things changed, it's not necessarily true. And he says women live shorter than men, live a shorter amount of time than men. So if they live a shorter amount of time, we want to make them bas mitzvah a year earlier. They should have another year to do mitzvahs. But again, today the fact is, women, generally speaking, outlive men. So then, but again, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just the biological makeup of people changed. Okay.
We learned that Bar Mitzvah from Yaakov's son.
Well, there's two reasons. Either Yaakov's sons or halacha Moshe Sinai.
What is it for 12? What is it?
That's what I'm saying. That learning of
It came just from Moshe. Okay.
yeah, either from Moshe Rabbeinu, but the reason for it is because women mature before men. So if a man is called 13-ish at 13, then a woman is called Isha at the age of 12. Now, even though we learned that by a man is supposed to make a big suda is by mitzvah, so poskim right, you're not allowed to do it by a girl. You're not supposed, let's put it this way, you're not supposed to make a big thing by a girl, bas mitzvah. In fact, according to many poskim, it's actually a negative commandment of a chukasem leiselechu, not going in the ways of the goyim. Because it's a goyish thing. Girls become bas mitzvah. What, like it says in Svarim, and the Rebbe brings this down, what girls should do at bas mitzvah, they should make like a malava malka for their classmates, only the girls in the class, and they should have a dvar Torah and things like that. But the big thing of making a bas mitzvah like this is not supposed to be. Now, there's a lot of rabbis and shluchim that do it because, why do they make a big thing when the Rebbe writes you're not supposed to make a big thing? Because for them it's a pa'ula, it's a gathering for the community. So they have most of them are non-religious people. So you have a gathering, you can speak Torah, do mitzvahs with them. So over there it's not stam a party for the bas mitzvah, it's an excuse, so to speak, to get people together, to inspire them in Yiddishkeit and get them to do mitzvahs or whatever it may be. So it says, even here it says, the family should do something in the house quietly and that's so on. Okay, now we learned by the boys that the father, when somebody comes by mitzvah, he says the bracha sheb torani me'ena shalozeh. Okay, and Chabad we don't say baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, but we say baruch sheb torani me'ena shalozeh. So by a girl, the minig is you don't say it.
Why?
Good question. So there's an interesting thing. The Magen Avram, I don't know, they quote the Magen Avram, but the Magen Avram really doesn't say. He brings down, the Magen Avram brings down, there's a Gemara in Nazir that says that the father is only obligated to educate his daughter, his son, not the daughter. It's a Bar Sheb Tarani, because in case he didn't educate his son properly, so he's now freed from this obligation that he had to educate the child. But there are opinions that say that because the father is not obligated to educate the daughter in all the mitzvahs, or like some people say, even if he is obligated to teach her mitzvahs, not all the mitzvahs equal to men. So the Peril, you don't say Baruch Sheb Torani by a woman. Even though it's interesting, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and even the Magen Avram, when he brings down the Gemara, he also says, but the fact is that halacha is that the father is obligated to educate his daughter. That's why, by the way, there's an interesting discussion based on this din, by the way. Can you, we spoke about it once by the dinim of tzedakah, but here's where it applies the difference between boys and girls. Can you use your meiser tzedakah money to pay tuition for your kids?
Yes.
You wrote a Shulchan Aruch?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can you use meiser money? So there are opinions that differentiate between boys and girls. What's the difference in halacha between boys and girls? Because boys, according to halacha, a father has an obligation to educate his child. So really, the father himself has an obligation to sit and teach the child Torah. But because it's not realistic, so you'll hire somebody to do your mitzvah. But a mitzvah that you're like, you can't use tzedakah money to buy yourself a pair of tefillin. You can't use tzedakah money to buy yourself lulav and esrog. It's a mitzvah you have to do. You can't use tzedakah money to do a mitzvah that you have to, even if you're poor. But you still can't use the tzedakah money for a mitzvah that you're obligated to do. So most poskim write that a boy, you can't use tzedakah money to pay for your own kids' tuition. There are opinions, though, that want to say that for girls, you could. Why? Because the father doesn't have an obligation to teach his daughter Torah. He has to teach her how to be a proper, nice, Jewish, religious girl. But there's no obligation on the father's part to teach his daughter Torah. It's only obligated v'shinantam levanecha. You have to teach your sons. So there are opinions that say that you are allowed to use tzedakah money for girls. When the Alter Rebbe comes out, you can't, and then many poskim hold that for a girl, you can't, because today you have an obligation to educate your daughter to be a proper Jewish girl. Where is that happening? Years ago, it was in the home. The girls hung around the mother, and they didn't work, right? The girls hung, even before schools. Years ago, girls didn't go to schools. So they would hang around the mother. The mother taught them everything, how to keep Shabbos, how to separate the challah, how to do, the mother taught the girls everything. Today, they don't do that, for whatever reason. So you have to send your girl to school to learn how to be a proper Jewish girl. So then, So then, it's an obligation the father has. So according to many opinions, he can't use tuition for a girl. But they do give you, Jews get out of things very easily. But if, let's say I have a kid and you have a kid, and I pay your tuition, and you pay my tuition, then it's tzedakah money. Because you're not obligated to to teach my kid. I'm not obligated to teach your kid. So therefore, it shouldn't be done though. But if people need to, they can do it in a way, I pay for your kid and you pay for my kid, so then it's... But it's an interesting way of looking at it. But there's a famous story. When the Mittel Rebbe was a little kid, the Alter Rebbe's son was a little boy, he called in a chassid, and he said, listen, I have a mitzvah to teach my kid Torah. You have a mitzvah to support your family. Let's switch. I'll support your family and you teach my son Torah. But again, it's an obligation, so that can't be deducted. But again, a father does have, the Alter Rebbe says clearly in Shabbos that a father has an obligation to teach his son and daughter Torah mitzvahs. So therefore, nevertheless, they still don't say Bar Tarani for various different reasons. Some poskim write the reason is because the girl is still supported by the parents until the wedding. The boys, on the other hand, 13 already, were out on their own years ago, not nowadays. So therefore, some poskim say they didn't make Bar Tarani because the girl still was under the father's jurisdiction and things like that.
Is that something that it's written as a halacha, that it's a brother doing too? Because I don't know if they do that.
What? There's a lot of poskim that say the minig is in most. Some people say if you want, you could say Bar Tarani Meina Shalazeh. Big deal. You could say it without Hashem's name. But you don't find today people say Bar Tarani by girls. They just don't. And because if you don't, and you do, it might be a shayla of Chukas Hagoy. I'll give you an example. I once heard a tape of a big Rav, I don't want to say his name, but not a Lubavitch Rav, but a big Rav, especially in the Kidduv movement. So there was a thing, some people still do it today, but a lot of people stop doing it. When a boy is born, there's a Shalom Zachar. Right? You make a Shalom Zachar the first Friday night. So there was a while going on in the modern Orthodox community, they would make a Shalom Nekeva. They had a girl who was born Friday night, they made a Shalom Nekeva, it was called. Even though the whole reason of a Shalom Zachar is because they forgot the Torah and everything like that, which doesn't apply to women. So it's a big Rav, he's still alive in New York, but not a Lubavitcher. But he said that if somebody makes a Shalom Nekeva, they're transgressing a biblical mitzvah of following in the ways of Goyim. Because in Torah, there's the men's things and the women's thing. You don't mix the two together. Here they're making the men's women, the men, the big parties for the women, like the big party for the men. It's a big issue. So again, that's, many people do it, but again, the right thing, halachically even, it's brought down in halacha, not only in the Rebbe's letters, about not doing, Okay, okay, that's as far as Bas Mitzvah. Okay, now when it comes again to Bar Mitzvah, and even though we learned Hilchos Tefillin, there's a lot of interesting things here about Tefillin. Okay, there's a positive mitzvah in the Torah to put Tefillin on every single day. Okay, it says it's interesting, even though the Torah doesn't say Yom, it's a Bailula, Bayom Arishin. The Torah doesn't say Ukshartim Leisa Yedacha B'chol Yom. So maybe the question is, maybe the Torah means once a month, once a week, once a year. It doesn't say how often. So some poskim say very simple. If the Torah doesn't say when, that means you have to do it every day. The reason why we don't wear tefillin on Shabbos, even though l'chayru we should, is because it says tefillin is called ois. Kshartim l'ois as a sign, al yadach. A Jew needs two oisias. By bris milah, it says it will be l'ois b'psarchem. It will be a sign in your body, right? Bris milah. So a Jew normally has
Gmail sent a long notification.
I just stopped it, okay? Anyway, so a Jew has two signs a day. He has bris milah and he has tefillin. So why don't we wear tefillin on Shabbos? The Torah doesn't say you don't not wear tefillin on Shabbos. The Torah says every day you wear tefillin. Why not Shabbos? So Chazal learned it out because it says by Shabbos ki eisi beini v'bnei Yisrael. Shabbos itself is an us. It's a sign. So if Shabbos is a us, then you have two eisi. You have bris milah, or women. The Gemara says it's considered as if they're circumcised, and then so you have that eis and the eis of Shabbos. So you don't need the eis of tefillin. That's the whole argument if you wear tefillin chol hamoed or not, because Yom Tif is a sign. The question is chol hamoed also a sign or not? So that's the big argument in Poskim, the Rishonim, if chol hamoed you have to wear tefillin or not. So, in fact, the Poskim write that now the hand tefillin and the head tefillin are two separate mitzvahs. Okay? It's not one mitzvah. One second. It's not one mitzvah. It's two separate mitzvahs. Therefore, if somebody, let's say, only has a hand tefillin, and they say they can't put on the head is bandaged up, so they put on the hand tefillin. What happens? You can't put on the hand tefillin, so you put on the head tefillin. Okay? So each one is a separate mitzvah. Now the Torah speaks about tefillin 4 times in the Chumash. Now if the Torah speaks 4 times in the Chumash, that's hand 4 times and head 4 times. That means every time you put on tefillin, you get 8 mitzvahs. And if you don't put on tefillin on a certain day, you're transgressing 8 positive mitzvahs. What did you want? What? Because the inyan is to have 2 signs. And Shabbos itself is an os, so you don't need the os of tefillin. That's, again, we're asking, it's all halacha Hashem Sinai. The reason we don't put on tefillin on Shabbos because Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, there's no alluding to it in Chumash that you don't put on tefillin. But what Hashem told Moshe, it's halacha Hashem Sinai. But what's the reason for it? Because Shabbos you have a separate os, so you don't need the sign of tefillin. You don't need both things. Now, because if you put on Rabbeinu Tamsto in Parshas Bay, it says L'man tia teiras Hashem beficha. By tefillin it says the Torah of Hashem should be in your mouth. From there the Gemara learns out Hok shekol ha-Torah kula l'tefillin. The whole Torah is likened to tefillin. That's when the Rebbe came out with the tefillin campaign before the 6-day war. The Rebbe said the one uniqueness of tefillin is the whole Torah is likened to tefillin. So by putting on tefillin, I think you're doing all the mitzvahs of the Torah. So you have to put on tefillin every day. It says they quote the Zayar, the Shalah quotes it, that if you put on tefillin, Hashem praises you, and look at this person that I created, and he's doing what I'm telling him to do, and give him precious, they give him, give him dignity and give him honor and covet. In fact, Yikar is tefillin. So the Yudam Eira, the Simcha, the Sasim Yikar. So Eira is Teira, Simcha zu Mitzvah, Sasim zu Mila, and the Yikar Elu tefillin. Because it's the beauty of Hashem, it's the pe'er. It's the glory of Hashem that a person wears. Okay, Machal Shin is the Ma'asim 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 Kim Shivla Gal Teira Chanan Melka Hashem Me'edot